Canes win! Canes win! Welcome to another edition of Saturday Sit Down. This week we go to the West Coast, Vancouver, where we catch up with former Lethbridge Hurricanes captain Jordy Bellerive. And Beller, I guess, first off, how's life on the coast during the time that we live in right now?
Good, man. It's pretty normal for me. Pretty normal for me. Like I said, just go to the gym and just on the ice and whatnot, kind of doing the things I'd be doing anyways. So, other than the social life's a little bit different. Other than that, I'm doing fine. It's going great for me.
Take us back to the end of the season in Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, when everything kind of came to a head with COVID-19. What was it like going through that process of ultimately having the AHL season canceled?
Yeah, it was crazy. We were actually on the bus, I think, when we kind of got the first wind of it. I think it was something to do with San Jose or something. They started talking about, having no fans or whatever there. And then a couple guys looked at each other and said, oh, maybe this might be happening to us pretty soon. And then literally the next day, bang, everything was shut down. We got called in. We had to practice, and coach canceled practice. And, because everything was up in the air. And he just said, hey, look, guys, we're not going to skate. None of us know what we're doing. So I think everyone's head's not in the right place anyway. So we actually didn't end up skating. And then from that point on, things escalated extremely fast. And before you know it, I'm packing up my apartment in 3 hours and driving back 50 hours to Vancouver. So it was pretty crazy, quick turnaround.
Yeah, I want to talk about the AHL season and what it was like for you. But what was that experience like, packing up in such a quick order and that long haul back to Vancouver, and, of course, having to cross the border early on in that situation?
Yeah, that was crazy. That was first when they started talking about closing the borders and stuff, and only for essential travel only and whatnot. And initially nobody really understood fully what that meant. So, all the Canadian guys were in a hurry to get over, and I was going to cross over and, closer to home. And then on the way back, I kind of just thought it'd be the best decision to, cross over in Estevan and, add a couple hours onto my trip just to get into Canada faster. So that's what I ended up doing. And it was fun. It was a lot of, similar roads that I've gone over in junior, stopped in Moose Jaw, stopped in Lethbridge, and all these little trips along the way. So I got home as fast as I could.
When you have a 50-hour travel arrangement, what do you do? Are you a music guy? Do you listen to podcasts? That's a lot of time to fill.
Yeah, I listened to a lot of podcasts, but honestly, I was probably on the phone for 70% of the time, just calling everyone that I could imagine, catching up with a lot of old friends and whatnot. And, I think that's the best way for me to do it. I just like to talk and like to chat with old people, like I said. So it was honestly pretty enjoyable in that sense for a little bit of it anyways.
Well, let's roll the clock back, Jordy. You, of course, a second overall pick by the Lethbridge Hurricanes in the 2014 WHL Bantam Draft. I want to go back to your childhood. Your older brother, Matt Bellerive, of course, played in the Western Hockey League with Vancouver and Red Deer. I think he played in Kamloops as well. And your older sister, Brielle, a pretty prominent hockey player, having played NCAA and at University of British Columbia. So as a young guy, being the youngest of three, what was it like growing up with two siblings that were pretty prominent in the hockey world?
It was great, it keeps you motivated, keeps you on your toes. And honestly, I couldn't have asked for anything better. Growing up with an older brother playing, in the path that you want to follow on is pretty special. And obviously having my sister, playing for Team Canada and Clarkson University, and UBC, and actually she played in Sweden this last year. So it's, it was pretty cool for me. Like I said, keeps you on your toes. We have a shooting rink in the basement, spend a lot of hours in there. We were pretty competitive with everything we did. So, if one of us was working out and the other one wasn't, we'd let them know, and, kind of motivates you to do more, and go above and beyond what your other siblings are doing. So it makes it fun.
Sure. Matt played in the Western Hockey League prior to you playing. So kind of from that age of 10 to 14 or 15 for you, what was it like going to, the Pacific Coliseum and watching your brother play in the Western Hockey League for the Vancouver Giants?
I'm not exaggerating. I looked forward to those games every single day until the day came up. And, I bet you if you ask a lot of my buddies, which I know for a fact, a lot of my buddies too felt the exact same way. It makes it so much more enjoyable to watch when you see someone out there that and, you spend a lot of time with. So I think, just watching him grow up there, and it was unbelievable for me, go to the game, get a little white spot, watch the game. I couldn't ask for much more. So it was really special for me. And, I learned so much from those games and, the atmosphere and all those little things. I learned so much about the WHL, and, that's when I really fell in love with it. And, there's really no doubt in my mind that was the route that I wanted to take because of that.
How did it make you a better hockey player having Matt and Brielle playing at a high level when you were kind of in the infancy of coming to that next level out of minor hockey?
I think just, like I said, it made me better just knowing, what to expect because of, prior, my siblings or, being a part of it and at all different levels. And yeah, I think definitely, in regards to my brother, just hearing all, stories, being on the road and, the bus trips and all the workouts and 3-on-3s and everything like that was, something that I, had an early advantage of, learning about. And, like I said, I fell in love with it. And in regards to my sister, she, really great skater and, really, tremendous work ethic. So that was something that I got to watch day in and day out. And, being a proud sibling and whatnot, it makes you want to make them proud as well and kind of going above and beyond what they're doing. And I think we did a great job, the three of us. It was kind of feeding off each other and obviously a tremendous support system for each other.
For those that don't know, the hockey and the Bellerive family know each other well. Of course, your great uncle Roger played in the original WHL with the Portland Buckaroos. What was it like kind of growing up with a guy like that who obviously, is a great storyteller and played at a time that, is a lot different than what we live in now when it comes to the game of hockey?
Yeah, he's such a pleasure to be around. I know you've been around a little bit, got a bit of a taste of him, and a lot of people in Lethbridge have as well. So I think, he's no different than he is around you guys. I think he's just, like you said, such a great storyteller and shares his experiences. And I never got to see him play, but my dad's father actually passed away before I got the chance to meet him. So he kind of filled that role for me as a grandfather on that side. And I think I'm so lucky to have him in my family and have, like you said, all the experiences he can share with me, and just such a light guy to be around and such a joy to be around.
So your WHL experience started with being drafted second overall in 2014. You came to training camp that first year, didn't sign right away. It was kind of a weird time for the organization. If you fast forward a year later, you sign along with Kalen Addison, Nick Watson, Brent Kissio comes in as the head coach. What do you remember from that big press conference where I feel like there had to have been 15 or 20 players, yourself included, and Brent introduced as the head coach? Kind of a whirlwind weekend, I feel.
Yeah, I remember that clearly. There's a lot of thought that went into my decision. And, with meeting Brent and Pete, and I think just meeting Pete, the kind of guy he is, and you can just tell by talking to him, he's so smart about the game and such a personable guy. And, I just, with Addie and Waddy and all those guys, I think we kind of just made the decision together. Honestly, we just kind of thought it was the best decision. And we, became pretty close from that. And I'll remember that for the rest of my life. I remember that very clearly at the press conference. 14-year-old, 15-year-old kids thinking we're a pretty big deal. So that was pretty funny.
So you come to camp, and of course you make the team as a 16-year-old. What was it like that first year? Because your first year was the first year this organization, where it is now, had all that success. It happened right out of the gate, and it never really let up. What do you remember from that first year in the WHL with the Hurricanes?
I remember clearly it was a very intense training camp. I think it was pretty evident that Brent wanted to set the tone early, and he did a great job doing that. For me, it was a real eye-opener about work ethic and whatnot, and, being a part of a team and, young men doing that. So I think I definitely, to be honest, didn't expect that with the years that they had previous, but, such a joy to be around. Everyone's so much happier when you're winning. The fans are there. he built a great atmosphere, great coaching staff, great general manager from great radio guy, top down. So top down. So everyone's unbelievable, and it just made it, such a joy to be around. And I think for the majority of my career there, we did a great job, following that path and having just a great atmosphere.
You, in your first year, the captain was Tyler Wong, and we've had Tyler on the Saturday sit down, and maybe one of the most popular players in Hurricanes history. How instrumental was he in helping you kind of get acclimatized to the Western Hockey League? Because he had gone through that situation of playing as a 16-year-old, and it's quite the adjustment going from midget or bantam to the WHL.
Yeah, it is, absolutely. Him and George both, when the first year I came in, were so great to me, and I got a chance to play with them a little bit and kind of just learned, how to be, like a young professional, as you'd say. And I just, Wonger especially, his work ethic was unmatched, and I think that set the tone for our whole team, and everyone followed behind him. So he's such a great guy, and I'll always have a special spot in my heart and my career and whatnot. So yeah, it was a pleasure.
That first year, you guys won the Central Division. Didn't go the way you had planned in the playoffs. You, of course, had gotten hurt against Regina, but you followed it up the next year into 2016, 2017. Talk about that season, because the season was good, but the playoffs was even better, and you guys had all that adversity, down 3-1 to Red Deer, on the road in Game 7 against Medicine Hat. How much fun was that first deep playoff run?
That was unbelievable. Yeah, like you said, we dealt with so much adversity, which in a sense made it that much better. Making as far as we did. Obviously, we fell short, but I'll never forget that, and that was such an instrumental part of my career. Just learning what it took to be, a part of something so special like that. And it's not just one guy doing it; it's everyone building together, and that kind of bonding makes everyone individually more successful as well. So I think you learn so much from experiences like that, and I think it carried on for sure.
I mentioned that we had Tyler on the Saturday sit down a few weeks ago, and I had asked him about that Game 7 overtime goal in Medicine Hat. You were on the ice for it, and he kind of told a story about after you were like, "Man, I was open. It could have been mine." What do you remember from that goal?
I remember that clearly. Don't think I said that. It's a classic Wonger making things up for make himself look better. But no, I'm just kidding. But no, I remember that clearly. He cut across. I was coming in the back side, and I just watched it go in clearly. So it was pretty special.
The series against Regina, I mean, you must have kind of an inner hatred for the Regina Pats, given that they had ousted you 2 years in a row. But what do you remember from that conference final? What I remember most about it, other than the losing out in 6 games, of course, is just the atmosphere at the NMAX Center. Unmatched.
Yeah, that was unbelievable. I think that was probably the best I've ever seen it, to be honest. And it was such a special feeling. I remember coming out, walking out. I think that was the whiteout year, right? Was that?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, everyone going crazy. I remember hearing it the second we walked out of our locker room, and goosebumps riding up right back the back of your neck, and everyone felt the same way. So that was something I'll never forget, definitely. And it gives me goosebumps right now just thinking about it. So yeah, it was really special.
That was a deep playoff run. You follow it up the next year in kind of a different circumstance. The 2016-2017, that was a team that kind of was expected to go on a deep playoff run, and you ultimately did. The next year, kind of a weird year. It kind of scoffed with 500. In fact, finished the season 500. Had the big trade with Giorgio and Stewart and Tanner Nagel going to Swift Current, and then all of a sudden, Jordy Bellerive's the captain of the Lethbridge Hurricanes. What was it like going from being a part of a group that was instrumental in going on a long playoff run to now all of a sudden being the guy going into a playoff series?
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. Obviously, that was a special year for Brad Morrison and a couple of guys like that. We had Tate Olson, Addie, and everyone. We had such a great team there that came together. And I think the thing that stood out for me that year was just how close we became as a team. The odds were, I'd say, for sure against us, and in a lot of those series there. And we just stuck together, and we loved each other so much as a group, and that was such a special thing to be a part of. And just shows you right there that, the team that we were, essentially selling to, we ended up taking them to Game 6, and I'm still a little bit bitter about that one, but that was something pretty special. And it's one of those things where you learn so much about yourself too, going in a situation like that. And like I said, we were going to essentially rebuild and turn it on really, big time in the playoffs. So that was a lot of fun for myself and a lot of guys, and obviously disappointing finish, but again, just a tremendous experience.
You mentioned Brad Morrison and the run that he went on in that playoff. 16 games, he had 16 goals, 37 points, absolutely ridiculous numbers. You, for the most part, playing on the same line. When you're playing on a line with a guy like that, who's obviously feeling it the way that he was, is it pretty special? And when in that moment, were you able to go, holy man, he's doing something absolutely incredible right now? Or are you kind of worried at that time about winning the game and the next play?
Well, I mean, of course you're worried about the game, but it's pretty hard to ignore someone doing that well. And he's such a great guy, and everyone was so happy for him. So it's, really enjoyable for all of us to watch, and kind of hard not to get distracted by it in a playoff game. But I think we did a good job of staying on track. And I think I played with him for about half the playoffs probably. And then, he was with Elmer and those guys and moving all over the place. So I got to watch a lot of it from the bench, and it was pretty fun to watch.
You go from that year where you're, not a favorite to do anything, and you go on a long playoff run, and you kind of, in your 4 years in Lethbridge, you kind of experienced every side of what a hockey team can do. We talked about the first year and how nobody expected you guys to do anything going into it. You won the division, lost in the first round, first time getting playoff experience for a big group. Second year, went on the deep run when you were expected to. The third year, went on a deep playoff run when you weren't expected to. And last year, your last year as a Hurricane, you guys had that great team. And there were situations with rinks that played into it, I think. But when you look back to last year and that Game 7 loss to Calgary, is that something that kind of eats at you a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. For a lot of people, that 19-year-old season's, it's such a special season. And like I said, we made those big trades, and, I had a lot of expectations to do great things. And obviously for it to be cut short in the first round is devastating, for a lot of guys, and, I'm sure for a lot of fans as well. So, yeah, it definitely still eats away at me. Like I said, I'm really bitter about that one as well. But, it happens. And, again, another experience. You learn from it. And, you guys got to take away all the positives you can from all these situations. So, obviously not the finish I was looking for, but I gotta move on and learn from it.
When you look at that last year's roster, though, you go on to play pro as a 20-year-old. Nick Henry, Jake Lecision, Jake Elmer, Taylor Ross. There's a big group of guys from that team. You look at Kalen Addison now, who's, of course, attending training camp with Minnesota. Igor Mereshko played pro. That was a pretty close group, and obviously a lot of guys that are still playing at a pretty high level.
Yeah, we had a special group there as well, and that's even made it even worse for us, really, for that being cut that short. So such a special group of guys once again, and obviously a lot of guys are playing pro right now, but I mean, I'll never forget that group as well. With Nick Henry and Lecision, those guys coming in were, two of my best buddies to this day. And only knowing for such a short period of time, it's a pretty special thing when something like that happens. And it doesn't happen that often in junior hockey when you get so close with a couple guys like that so fast. So yeah, it's too bad that it ended so short.
I want to ask about your pro experience this past year with Wilkes-Barre, Scranton Penguins in the American Hockey League. What adjustment was it like for you going from playing Major Junior in Lethbridge to now you're playing with the big boys in the American Hockey League? And from all accounts, everything that I've heard, it's a pretty tough league to play in.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot harder than I expected. It is a really tough league. Everyone's trying to prove themselves at all times, and the expectations are so high and compete level's so high. It's a league where that you really can't get away with taking your foot off the gas. So, not that you want to do that anytime in junior, but I just think that in the American Hockey League, and you just really don't have the option. So just being that, having that consistency and that work ethic is something that's so important. And I think that, I learned so much. There's so many different, game within the game, little things that you learn and you pick up on along the way that necessarily you wouldn't learn in junior. So I think it's definitely a big step up, but I really enjoyed my time.
I'm a numbers guy, as you know, and I like to look at numbers and break them down a little bit. And I did a little digging, as you might expect going into this. 53 games this year, 22 points. But when you look at the first half of the season, just 6 points in the first 27 games, 16 points, 10 goals in the last 26. What changed maybe for you from the first half to the second half of the American League season, and how much more comfortable did you feel after Christmas?
Forbes, I don't really know what it was that changed for me. I don't really think anything changed. I think I started getting some good bounces, and once you start scoring a little bit more, you start getting a little bit more confidence and start picking up and putting the puck in situations where you necessarily wouldn't without that confidence. I think my mindset was the same. My work ethic was the same. I think it just worked out well for me. And I had a strong second half, and I was really happy with that. And it's funny, if you look back even deeper and you look at my junior stats, it's the exact same thing when I was 16. So I had one goal, I think, before Christmas or something like that. So it's funny how things like that work out.
So what's your goal for next year? How do you build upon the second half? I imagine for you as a hockey player, as a competitor, the goal probably next year is to kind of maybe get your teeth wet when it comes to the National Hockey League. Am I right in saying that? And that Pittsburgh, for a good chunk or an experience, is at the top of the list for Jordy Bellerive?
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody's goal is the same in that regard. And like I said, I got my first year pro out of the way and learned a lot. And of course, I'd like to, take advantage of this long summer and, grow as a player and as a human, and, kind of just reflect on what I learned this year and come into camp real strong next year and prove myself.
The one thing you just said there, grow as a human. How did you grow as a person, as a human, playing professional hockey in the States? In Lethbridge, you're far from home and you leave at an early age at 16, and you're 12 hours away or 13 hours away from Vancouver. But you talked about earlier a 50-hour vehicle ride at 19, 20 years old. What's it like to go to the States, and how much growing up did you have to do?
Yeah, definitely a lot. Of course, when you're playing junior, you're living with a billet family, who cooks for you and does your laundry and does all the dirty work for you. And I think the biggest thing about growing as a person, being a professional, is how you treat yourself off the ice, and taking care of your body, and making sure you get the right foods and whatnot and the right amount of rest and all these different things where you're aware of in junior, but it's not necessarily do or die in those situations. And I think that was the biggest thing for me this year, is there was not much room for hesitation. I had to do all the right things at all the right times, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed learning a lot about myself. I truly did. I learned a lot about my rest and nutrition and all these different things that, like I said, you kind of about, but you're not as diligent with. And then just living on your own is a lot to handle as a 20-year-old kid.
What's it like in Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, to play hockey? Is it a hockey crazed town or towns? I don't know what it's like there.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I think we're probably the main attraction in town for sure. So that makes for some good fans, and a lot of on the big nights, there's a lot of fans and a lot of rowdy fans. So it's fun. It was a great experience.
The two things when I think of Scranton that I think of, and of course being a hockey person, you think of the Penguins, but you also think of the sitcom The Office. Is there talk about from locals there about that sitcom, or is it prominent down there? Do they talk about it? And is there a set there or something like that?
Yeah, there is. I've never been, but yeah, I think there's a set. Wilkes-Barre, Scranton. It's like Wilkes-Barre's 20 minutes from Scranton, so I think it's in Scranton. I've never been, like I said, but I don't know. There's the classic From Dwight jersey, stuff like that. You see that one roaming around every now and then, so that's pretty funny. But other than that, not too much, no. But classic show.
Have you ordered your paper from Dunder Mifflin?
Not quite.
Jordy, I guess the last thing I want to throw by you is on the whole, when you look back at your 4 years in Lethbridge as a Hurricane, what's the biggest takeaway for you, and what do you think of most when you think of Lethbridge?
I look back and I think of myself becoming a man. I think that was the biggest thing for me. You move away at 16, and we just talked about the adjustments of me going to professional, but from being a minor hockey player moving into junior, essentially a mini pro. I think you start learning along the way the little things similar to what I learned this year. But then you start learning the social aspect and what it's like, kind of having a presence in a community, learning that how much people care about you and your teammates and stuff like that. And like I said, from top down, I don't think there's a better organization in the league than Lethbridge Hurricanes. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I'm so thankful for all my experiences and all the people I met along the way. And I was just talking to Vandy about it the other day. I don't think I'd change anything about my career there. I think it was unbelievable. Get a little bit emotional thinking about it. But it was unbelievable. And I just think about all the people. That's the biggest thing for me in the organization.
I lied. I have one more thing. NHL return to play. You, of course, aren't a part of the 31-man roster for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and I imagine you'll be watching very closely at how Pittsburgh does against Montreal in the qualifying round and probably thereafter. How excited are you to be able to watch some live sports and cheer from afar for an organization that you grew up watching and now you're a part of? Do you think they have a good chance?
Yeah, I do. I think they got a great group of guys and like a great organization, top down. So I think they have a great chance for sure.
Jordy Bellerive, very much appreciate your time and look forward to catching up with you another time down the road.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Forbesy. Appreciate it.
All right, there's Jordy Bellerive, the 26th captain in Hurricanes franchise history, on another edition of Saturday's Sit Down. We hope you enjoyed it.